5 years from now, you will be the same person you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read. Hello and welcome. Welcome to Input English. This episode starts with a quote. So let me define my terms and explain where we're going with this. We're talking about perspective and how perspective changes with time. Starting with the quote. So the quote came from Charles E. Jones. Charles E. Jones, in youth, liked the word tremendous. He was an enthusiastic young guy, and he said the word at least one time too often, and somebody made it his nickname. So he became Charles Tremendous Jones. He was an author. He was a public speaker. His field was inspirational speaking, personal improvement, positive attitude. That was what he did. He was born in 1927, and he died in 2008. So he was my parents' generation. His quote that I started this episode with dates back to the 1950s, maybe early 60s. So that's between 50 and 70 years old. So whenever you have literature, anything that humans make, it represents the time that it was made. Things change, societies change, attitudes change, and the world's changed. The United States of the 1960s doesn't look anything like the 21st century United States. No, it's completely different. So I'm not trying to rewrite his old quote, but we can riff on it. An aside, okay? If I say riff, I'm using a simple little word to riff on something. Riff can be a thing, it can be the subject, or it can be an action. If you say it was a riff, you're really talking about a musical term. A riff is a group of chords or notes that become part of a phrase. So Dave Brubeck, the jazz pianist, wrote a song called Take 5 that became world famous. And it starts out da-da, da-da, da-da. Now, you now have evidence I'm not a singer. I can't sing it for you. No. But that's the rhythm. And he played it on the piano. And that became part of the phrase, that became part of the song. And so that da-da, da-da, da-da is the riff. Okay. So it's a thing. In music, specifically jazz. But if you say to somebody, yeah, I'm going to riff on that. Well, if you're holding a musical instrument, you're going to improvise. But if you're talking about something and you're not playing music, then you're using the word riff to mean you're going to embellish, expand upon, improvise. You're going to start with that idea and then expand it. And that's what we're going to do. So if you go back to the original quote, what Charles Tremendous Jones was telling you is that we are very influenced by input. He didn't use the word, no, because in the 50s, nobody was talking about input. But that's what he was talking about. He just didn't use the word. Input comes from people, and it comes from the language we absorb. In his day, there were a lot of magazines, but most of us looked at them as fluff. I've never met a person that says, you know, my life was changed when I read that magazine article. No, magazines were characterized as entertainment. People used to subscribe to magazines, and they would show up in the mailbox, and they'd sit and go through them for hours, kind of like surfing the internet these days. So magazines were more for entertainment, but books could have a great influence on people. And that's what he was saying. Books and people were very influential. But what he really was talking about was input. So with that understanding, let's come to the 21st century. Let's move 50, 75 years into this present day. And what would be a good way of saying that? Not to steal his thunder, he earned his fame, but for our own understanding. Well, going forward over time, the biggest influences on our lives are going to be certainly the people we meet and the media or the input we consume, the information we get access to. And that's not just books, it's seminars, it would include videos, podcasts. You might object. Podcasts, oh no, they're just for entertainment. No, podcasts can be incredibly useful and powerful for people because in our business here, Comprehensible Input, podcasts are your friend because they're input. As a beginner in a new language, podcasts are hard to get a grip on. It's hard to find your way in a podcast because you don't know enough words. But there is a point in the learning of any language to where you understand enough of that language that you can turn on a podcast and understand it. So I'm not going to create a quote to write it down and have it attributed to me. No, it's not about me. I'm just riffing on what he said. We are very influenced by input. If we avail ourselves of good input in the form of books, audiobooks, podcasts, lectures, that kind of input can very much influence us and influence our future. This is all good news. That's it for this episode. I wanted to riff on Charles Tremendous Jones's famous quote. Hope you enjoyed it. Comments below if you please, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye.